AMG episode number 78. The countdown timer decided to just pause partway through, so that was kind of fun. You won't see that on your end, but we saw it on our end. I don't know what happened there. That was kind of interesting. So regardless, myself, collecting people. Steve, how are you?
I'm good, and I just got an update on Blair. He's now wading in 3 feet of water in Florida. Apparently, he just went down there to learn how to swim. So he's hopefully by the time he comes back, he'll be doing the doggy paddle and should have a nice tan. But congratulations, Blair, on getting in 3 feet of water.
Exciting times, truly exciting times as the gallivanting Blair goes through the world. Good times, good stuff. So, no specific product this week. I will touch on the Toronto Spring Expo briefly, since I was there. Steve didn't make it out; he was minding the store, but I will touch on it a little bit. I'll give a couple of observations and share a couple of things that will go into that, and then we do have some cards that we'll share that were included that Steve provided some images of, so a little bit of a mix of things. So I'll share some of that, and then also at the same time we'll take a closer look at we'll get a little bit of some thoughts on the playoffs so far, because one of the fun things that is good with the evenings at the expo is that a lot of times when you're going out to dinner, you try to make your dinner locations based on availability of televisions for reasons. Just throwing it out there. Something that may have played into considerations of proximity and location of televisions.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. So real quick, a couple of things that we've got. A lot of these are restocks, so I'm going to go through the list of these. If there's any that are notable, Steve, feel free to let me know. But for the most part, I'll just go through the list here quickly. 2024 Donruss Optics Football, the football hobby. 2024 Panini Phoenix Football, so that product. Traditionally, that's kind of a fun product if you like the designs on them. So take a look at some of the previous Phoenix to get a taste of that. A couple of Pokemon products. So Pokemon Kanto Power Mini Tin Display Box. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet 151 poster collection. Pokemon Prismatic Evolutions Elite Trainer, the 2025 Panini Basketball Hoops Fat Packs, and then the 2024 Upper Deck Fleer Scooby-Doo trading cards. So a little bit of Scooby-Doo thrown in there. As usual, if you're interested and curious about pricing or availability, reach out directly to the store. That is the best way to get the current, because a lot of times, especially with some of the products, you can't tell it online unless you have the right licensing. We've talked about that in the past. But if you want to know pricing availability, reach out directly or use the contact points. So the scrolling ticker there has the Instagram and the website. You can use that. Links are in the description. Reach out directly and you'll be able to get some answers on exactly what's available. Same thing with the cards. If you're curious about something, if it's available, if it's in stock, all those things, reach out directly. You'll get a quicker answer. If you've got a general question, feel free to put it in the comments and we'll usually address it the following week. So those are some of the stock.
It'll be interesting to see what the Scooby-Doo cards look like. Everybody likes Scooby-Doo.
Well, I think a lot of so one thing I'll say, I'll touch on briefly, and then I'll grab a couple of comments here. I actually found quite a number of people have been enjoying collecting the non-sport. That's been a big kind of fun little category that some people are getting into. They're having some fun with. So that's been kind of a fun thing to see, because for the most part, it's, it gives interest. And I know some dealers kind of specialize in it, so they were getting a fair bit of traffic, at least people looking at it, because people can collect sports and all that, but it's gotten expensive over the years. Some of the non-sport stuff is still kind of relatively, collector friendly pricing, relatively speaking. Some of it, not all of it, but some of it is. And if you really like a certain IP, if you like Scooby-Doo, if you like some of these other different franchises, they do have some good products out there now that can give you some options.
Absolutely. And just looking at the price of it again, some of the sports products have gotten extremely expensive, and some of the non-sport is too. But yeah, this is a product that, kind of fits in that fun range, I guess, as we like to say. It's not crazy expensive, but you can enjoy, opening a product and without breaking the bank.
Absolutely. Totally. So a couple of comments from last week's video, and we always appreciate when anybody takes the time to leave a comment. So thank you for that. First one here, Canadian Cards said, another great episode, guys. Loved hearing your stories. So Canadian Cards is the one who asked about kind of our first pack, that kind of thing. So thank you very much for the question. Appreciate that. Keep the hard work. We will do our best. Tim Logan here says, awesome video as always. If those two vintage football cards are there Friday, I'm buying them. 100% hands down. So if Tim came by and bought them, then you know who.
Oh, he got him. He came in. He came in Friday, and I think it was Friday. He was surprised they were still there. So he's turning into a fun collector. He just sees things that catch his eye, and it doesn't necessarily matter what sport. He's just kind of bouncing all over the place, but he he definitely likes the vintage, and the older the better.
Absolutely, good stuff. But yeah, in the same vein though, and obviously in this case it worked out for Tim, which is awesome. But like I recommended earlier, if you are curious about something though, I would recommend reaching out directly because some of the stuff moves quickly. So sometimes we'll feature it and it's already gone even by the time we'll show it. Other times it's available, like it's out there. And this will kind of segue me a little bit into the expo. So let me talk about this. So obviously, Spring Expo is not as busy as the fall. However, kind of my observations for this particular show were that I think foot traffic was pretty strong. And in a lot of the dealings and things that I was hanging around at, like it's one of those things where if you got the time, definitely check it out. But keep your ears open because you will learn a lot just by listening and observing. A lot of times, that's kind of a fun little side thing for me to do. But one of the things that I observed in it is that there was still quite a bit of enthusiasm. Some dealers, again, your mileage may vary. There's so many dealers out there. I can't possibly survey everyone, but I did notice that some dealers found that they actually did quite well. One of the dealers that I kind of overheard actually outdid their last fall expo, which is big, which is a big statement given that the fall expo tends to be pretty strong. And you know, we talk about we don't spend too much time dwelling on it here in this venue, but there are outside economic factors. There are outside, you know, cross-border factors. All these things could play into it and potentially affect the bottom line. But even some of these dealers found that they actually did quite well. And some dealers who maybe didn't, you know, they didn't do quite as well as beating the Fall Expo, some of them outdid their own projections. They factored all those things in. They thought, oh, this might hurt business a little bit because of this. Maybe I've got a lot of American customers and I'm a little worried about that. But a couple of those folks even found that they outdid what their expectation was, which is good. It's to say that there is still a nice, strong base of hobby people. But kind of the observation I gave to Steve, what it came down to is one thing, though. What I found in almost all instances is the dealers who reported doing pretty well tended to be dealers who, in a lot of cases, had some experience and made sure to adjust their pricing to where the marketplace is today because they didn't try to cling on to old pricing that wouldn't work. Because if you overprice your stuff, well, guess what? There's a room full of people that are competing with you, especially like commonly available things, liquid things, young guns, future watches, stuff that you'll see on a lot of tables. Well, if you're the one who's priced 20 or 30% higher than everybody else, Steve, there's a good chance you didn't have a good show.
Yeah, and we talked before we started this too. Every show's different, and the goal is to always have great stuff available on your table, but that isn't always the case. So um, it's nice to get feedback from people. For every person that says they had a great show, there's one that will say the worst show ever. But on the flip side, the next show might be his best show ever. So you kind of take it with a grain of salt and you know, keep your eyes and ears open. But obviously, you know, several things, they got to be priced right. You got to have stuff people want. Just having stuff doesn't mean it's going to sell. And whether you're at, you know, the largest show in Canada or at your local flea market, if you don't have things people want and it's not priced properly, you're not going to have a successful day. Whether your table costs you $30 or $600, you have to have what people want, and that's very key in this business. We always touch on, you know, especially during the you know, the boom in that there was card stores opening everywhere. Um, what was happening is people had great collections and they tried to make a business out of it. And you know, you talk to them after the first month or so, and they're like, "Wow, things are great. You know, it's booming." And then by, you know, month 3 or 4, they start, when you ask them the same question, they might start panicking a little bit because there's a science to this. Like, stuff just doesn't show up on your doorstep. Selling's the easy part. Finding stuff and being able to purchase it is probably the hardest part of this business, and building relationships with customers. So if you don't have that, it's tough out there. But no, it sounds like, you know, good feedback. It was nice to see the traffic was really good, considering, you know, playoffs are on and things like that. Sometimes people would rather be glued to the TV.
Yeah. So that's why I say, like, a lot, the spring tends to be normally the quieter show, predominantly because of, as Steve says, the playoffs are on. Also, if the weather starts getting agreeable, I'll say for 2 of the days, like the first day and the last day, I think the weather was actually very nice. Sunday, I think, was about 18 degrees and sunny. Very good. For Thursday was actually in the 20s, well into the 20s. It was actually kind of a little bit warm. So two of those days right there were actually very agreeable weather-wise. And you've got a lot of hotels nearby and a lot of, and the Expo's done a better job in the last couple of years. Now they've got all these other activities. They've got events the first 3 nights, two sponsored events specifically, and one kind of not unofficial official event. And they had a ton of autograph guests, a lot of that going through, stuff happening at the stage. So they had different things to draw people in. So at the same time, they've got all that activity going on. You've got all these dealers available. The size, the shape of it. So they used the same kind of setup as last time. So Steve, you'll be familiar with that one. It actually meant that you were almost everybody was in the same room. Basically, it was multiple halls, but the rooms kind of flowed one into the other. So you weren't necessarily having that separation or the long hallway. None of that stuff. You actually had everybody. You could go in a grid. You could kind of go all the way back and forth and around, and you were able to get around. And so everybody had a chance to get some foot traffic. So I think was helpful for people to get a chance to at least showcase their wares. And I think that helped probably some people move a couple more things.
Yeah. And actually, I talked to Brad briefly yesterday on the PSA side of things. I think he said it was amazing how many people showed up in person. So I think they more than exceeded their goal for the show. So that's good for the hobby. And again, did the the tariffs and all that thing make people a little more nervous, and they wanted to show up and submit in person. But either way, I know Brad was very pleased with how things went on the PSA side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and each one of these are like individual indicators, so I'm not going to claim to anybody that this is a sweep. It's not a sweeping generalization. I have no way of knowing how each dealer individually did. As I said, you can take some folks at their word, but a lot of the ones that I got feedback from are ones that I have dealt with a lot in the past, and that we've had a lot of these conversations, good years and bad years, all the way in between. And a lot of the ones that I talk to tend to be pretty straight shooters. If it's a good show, it's a good show. If it's not a good show, it's not a good show. And usually I like to check in with those people because they tend to be more reliable. I tend to put more stock in what they're saying. And again, if I know that they price their stuff, well, then it's a good barometer for me. It tells me that the audience is either buying or not buying. That gives me a good indicator of kind of where things sit. And one of the things that I was kind of chatting with Steve. So I'll give a couple of general thoughts and tips that I'll offer to folks for future expos, for future shows like this. One of them is that obviously with the way things have gone with a lot of these products, because we'll do all these products where we'll feature all the different ones. There were people there that brought boxes, including AMG, and it kind of falls into multiple categories. So one of the categories that I'll give is you've got folks that are bringing things that are either of interest or potential volume that they feel they can move in volume, especially in that environment. One example is obviously if you've got stuff that is going to be part of the Upper Deck pack redemption. So those products already have a built-in incentive. So in addition to, especially if they're an authorized dealer who can offer the little slip of paper so you can get your free packs, well, those are products that they know are already built in, are more likely to sell because you've got the added incentive. So people might buy multiple boxes or might buy a case to take advantage of that. So that's one type of product. Other products are ones that may be products that are hot for whatever reason. You got the hot rookie or it's particularly interesting to people. So those are the kind of products that they'll bring. But there's other ones where it's like, all right, this is stuff that we've got, but we really would like to move on it. And I was observing and kind of we were looking at it. And I will say, and I won't give specifics because at the end of the day, it's their business and they wanted to. And if you were on the show floor, you got a chance to see it. I will say that I saw more than a few products that certain dealers maybe have trouble selling in their local region. They brought it to the expo with the intention of, all right, it's time for me to move off this. I will give one example since I'm the one who bought it. Steve's personal favorite and mine, AEW. So the first Allure product, the first AEW Allure, I bought 4 boxes on the show floor for $75. And while we may not remember the specifics, Steve, I think I can say confidently that is well below cost.
75 each or
75 each.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
75 for all 4 would have been a great deal.
If 75-4 would have been a great deal, that would have been better. That would have been better than the blaster, Steve.
Yes.
But even as it is 75 per for the hobby box was well below cost. So AKA they're done with it and they just want to move on from it. And it's $75 per for a hobby box. And remember, in the year 2025, we're talking about a hobby box of basically anything. Then you can just rip it kind of for fun. You're not really worried about necessarily the ROI on that. You can open it and have a little fun with it. So stuff like that, it was out there. So that's the point. This the point of, especially today. If I go to Walmart and they happen to have product, trust me, go look at what the blaster boxes cost. $75 is not that much more than what the blasters are going for these days in relative terms. So anytime you can get a hobby box legitimately of anything, pretty good. But it tells you that some dealers were at the stage where it's like, those were the last handful of boxes. It was like, this is the blowout price. Please just take it. There you go. So it was out there, but you have to then be willing to put in the legwork to actually go and look around and ask. And this was the other kind of theme that I'll offer. Sometimes it is worth asking. You will never know one way or the other. And some dealers, the worst they can say is no, as long as you're not being, as long as you're not being a jerk about it. You can pose the question. Just say, would you take this? So because sometimes the sticker price might be on it, but what if I take all of them? Would you be willing to do it at this price? And people would be surprised, Steve, how often the answer is, yeah, sure. All right, I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating from the dealer's point of view because, like you touched on, a lot of times we take product that doesn't sell well here or product we're just ready to move on from. So we're already significantly discounting it
Mm-hmm.
and, losing money on it. And then, someone approaches you and, wants it discounted again.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's one of those things where you just make the decision. Um, do I hold for firm at the price I'm already losing on, or do I just kind of say, it's time to turn that loss into cash and move on to the next product and hopefully make it up on the next item that comes in. So I'd say it's probably about 70-30. They're willing to move on from it within reason. I mean, if you
Mm-hmm.
absolutely come in too low, they might politely tell you to walk away. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that, it's worth a shot. And most
Yeah.
people kind of know as they're walking around what people are ready to move on, and things that again it's about pricing. If something's priced on with market value, probably not going to budge a whole lot. But then some of the other products, you can just tell look a little out of place there. Those are the ones you go after because you can still get some great values and great cards out of those heavily discounted items.
Absolutely. And key kind of to what I'm saying, though, in the example I gave, is there is a difference. And so I'll make the distinction here. There is a difference between, asking that question when your intention is to buy one box where it's not really that enticing, as opposed to if you'd like, and if you're willing to do this price per box, I'll buy them all.
Mm-hmm.
So that might, in some cases, it'd be like, okay, well, then you know what? Then I get to get rid of the whole thing. I don't have to cart this away. Some cases that makes it a little bit more palatable. It's still kind of like, yeah, but at the same time, like, then I don't have to take this back with me. I'm not stuck with the last couple of boxes or whatever the case may be. Sometimes that helps a little bit. Your mileage may vary. It's case by case basis. It depends on the individual. But I've had some dealers who volunteer. They're like, look, if you take all of them, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, well, maybe it's a win-win situation. Your mileage may vary. It's different each time.
Yeah.
So one more thing I'll touch on as well, kind of in the same vein as the it's worthwhile asking. I was laughing. It was actually the last transaction. I'll quickly share it. The last transaction that I did was not for a card. It was actually a dealer that was across from my buddy's table. I usually kind of camp out at my buddy's table and leave some of my bags there and everything, and then kind of wander the floor and do everything. But across from them was kind of a young guy, and he had a table full of different stuff on there. And the tables themselves have the tablecloth that kind of drape over the front of it. If you've ever been to the Expo, you've seen all those tables with the tablecloths. And in front of it, they had a couple of jerseys that were kind of just draped over the front of it, but no pricing or anything. They just had these jerseys that were put on there. And I had noticed this one a couple of days that I was looking at it, but it was the last day. It was about 20 minutes before I was about to head out the door. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just kind of curious because what I saw was I mentioned before, I'm a Dallas Star fan from the Mike Modano days earlier in the 90s. So my favorite jersey that Dallas ever had was the original black jersey, the Dallas Star black jersey, before they swapped it out to a couple different versions of it. And they had that one. They had that example draped over. And I just saw it, and I didn't get a too close a look at it, but I saw it there, and I just walked over to take a closer look, and I just said to the guy, "It's like, is this decoration or is it for sale?" And he goes, "No, I'll sell it. Yeah, no problem." And I said, "Okay, fine. Again, worth asking." So I said, "Okay, what do you want to do on it?" So I take a look at it. First, I take a closer look at it, and I go, "What do you want to do on it?" And basically, and this is kind of funny, and Steve will co-sign on this negotiation strategy. So he starts off as, I'm thinking like $60. but I'd probably do 50. Again, I haven't said anything yet, and
Mhm.
you've already negotiated against yourself, so I'm not going to fight you on this. But nonetheless, I said, well, and then I grabbed my wallet, I start looking, good with 40. He says, yeah. I'm like, all right, great.
The
So
rest the
again,
rest of the money was in your sock, I bet.
I, Steve, it is what it is. Look,
Not
I'm
your
sorry.
first rodeo.
Yeah, like, look, it is what it is. I'm not going to fight you on this. So anyway, so here it is.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and it's the old starter one. And like, but once if you've had these before or owned them in the past, you can kind of tell like the weight of it and everything. Like, look, to be honest with you, at $40, I'm not too bothered by it. But I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the stitching and everything on this. Like, no, that's basically this is a starter from back in the day. I go, hey, you know what? I got one when I watched my next Dallas game at a good price. Again, but there's no pricing on it, Steve. There was no indication it was for sale, but you never know unless you ask.
Yeah. No, and we have items like that in the attic. Last week I bought two cameras. I mean, since when are we a camera store? But
Mhm.
this old couple just came in, and I don't know, they were probably from the 70s or something like that. And I just kind of looked at them. They're like, we were just going to throw them in the garbage, but you think you guys could use them? And I just kind of looked at them, and I was like, a lot of people like using them for wall hangers and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know. I'll give you $10 for them. I don't know if that's a good deal or bad deal. And they're like, hey, they were going in the garbage. And I don't know if it was 90 minutes later, two different people bought a camera each, and same sort of thing. They just thought it's nostalgic. It's neat. It looks old, and it will look great displaying. So it doesn't hurt to go out of your comfort zone every now and then, which is kind of why we have the attic back there. Just random things like I think last week I sold a pair of Batman shoes. Just some old Converse Batman. Like, again, what are we doing with things like that? But again, it goes back to if it kind of catches my eye. I'm like, there's got to be. I can't be the only one that feels this way. There's got
Mm.
to be someone else out there that will think it's kind of neat. So sure enough, last week I sold 20-year-old Batman shoes and two cameras. So got $30 for the three, but hey, that's kind of why the attic's there.
Absolutely. Yeah. But that's why I say, like, that's why I wanted to kind of share that story because more than anything else, it's just a reminder that even if we've been to these shows a lot, sometimes we forget that really simple things. Again, sometimes you never know unless you ask. I could have just assumed that it was a display thing because no indication it was for sale. A lot of times things are for sale. Like almost everything that's on these tables oftentimes is for sale, even if it's not obvious. But again, last day of the expo, maybe you don't want to take it home with you. You ask the question. And also, I have no idea what price he would have possibly wanted for it. I have no way of knowing the answer to that until
Mhm.
you ask. And then it turned out already we're starting off in a great place and we wound up at a very good, like, at that point, you know what? I'll take it home with me. Last thing I bought before I headed out the door. So kind of a fun little buy there at the end. Okay. So let me show off a couple of things here. Steve provided some pictures of a couple of different things. So first one here is kind of the consequences, the show aftermath after one of these big shows. So I'll show this to you, but I'll also give you a little bit of a heads up on something you're going to want to know about this. So here you got the image of all the boxes making their way back after the Toronto Expo, but all these boxes represent some boxes that are going to wind up back in inventory and are going to be available. So if you're curious about what's inside the box, you want to know what's in the box, like the movie Seven. There's no Gwyneth Paltrow heads, but if you want to know what is in the box, you can go to the store or reach out directly to the store and get contact.
Yeah, and the crew showed up around 4 o'clock yesterday, so we just kind of unloaded everything, and that will be my task today is getting everything back in order. They did pick up a few things. I still haven't found them yet. One thing I can mention that we did pick up, we probably purchased around 40 frame pieces from Frameworth. Um, and they're like kind of 75 to $250 pieces, which is great for people that are looking for gifts and things like that. Not necessarily autographed items, but whether it's a Taylor Swift frame picture, which we've had those before and they flew out the door, but just little cheaper items that should do well around here. Of course, we've got the more expensive frame jerseys and things like that, but we decided to make a conscious effort just to go with a lower price point. for people, whether it's for their bedroom or their the man cave or something. Just a nice little wall hanger. So there'll be lots of different things to choose from once we get everything organized.
Very good. Very good. So let's get into a couple of cards here. So we've got here basically a nice stack of some 70s vintage for the most part of a larger collection, Steve. So there's a lot of different stuff here, but anything in particular stand out or anything in particular you want to note here?
Well, this is kind of part of the reason I stayed behind. For whatever reason, the last couple months, we've been buying a lot of stuff's just been walking in the store, especially vintage. So I believe Thursday, a gentleman walked in and he had around 2,000 singles from 1970 to 73, and they were in really nice condition. Probably like 80% of them were near mint. So yeah, that's just an example of what I plucked through, and as you can see, lots of ores. The 72 O-Pee-Chee player logos or team logos, which are most of them are short printed. So yeah, no, and that's my bread and butter. So I was thrilled to see those come in, and kind of validated the reason I stayed behind as well.
There you go. And as usual, some classic fun images there. Guy Lafleur, that is quite a head of hair. Very nice. Very nicely done there. So as Steve says, a lot of Bobby Orrs. You got some Gordie Howe's here. You've got some of that included on Billy Smith here. Nice 70s card. So a lot of different stuff here. Kind of interesting. 71, 72, Gary Cheevers. It's always kind of funny looking at some of these images like I always talk about. Phil Esposito, the floating head. Little creepy. Got to be honest. Little bit. Just throwing it out there. A little creepy, but nonetheless, quite a selection. And again, you can check out and ask directly if there's any questions or inquiries about these, because there's some interesting stuff here. So let's see if it'll let me go to the next one here. All right, let me go here, and I will use this. We got some Vladdy Jr. stuff here, which is kind of interesting. So graded CSG stuff, a lot of autographs. So anything in particular you want to note about these? I can talk about the individual cards, but anything notable about these that you want to talk about?
Yeah, again, like you just never know what's going to come into the store. A gentleman came in, I think he had 14 Vladdy autographed cards, lots of rookies and things like that. But it's really the first time I've purchased CSG graded cards. They don't make their way out east too often. So I kind of liked them. Like I gave them the once over. I liked the holder. The grades look pretty good on them, but again, just something different. And so I think I got like 8 of them in the CSG holders. So that's what really caught my eye of the whole collection. I wasn't overly familiar with the CSG grading, but I do like the holder. You could tell it was pretty durable holding it in my hand. So and I've already sold a couple of these as well. So yeah, no, and again, another nice purchase. I just walked in. So I 2 days in a row, I got hit with nice little buys.
So a couple of things I'll note about these, just to give a little insight. Number one, obviously, Vladdy Jr. is appropriately timed. He signed the long-term extension with the Jays, so the expectation now is that he'll be a long-term Jay, which is great. The lineage with his father and everything. Considering his father was a long-time Expo before continuing the rest of his career, that Vladdy Jr. is sticking around in Canada is kind of a nice thing. It's good, and hopefully he plays well. Again, it's a long-term contract, but hopefully he plays well. Now, for the cards themselves, what I'll say is this. I have a little bit more experience with CSG. Steve and I were talking about this and everything. I find them to be fairly credible, personally. They just haven't made inroads in sports cards. But here's the advantage of it. You're not paying a super crazy premium because of that. So number one. And number two, I actually think the holders are very nice. I think they present the card very well. CSG had some issues early on with the green holder that people just didn't seem to like, which I understood. The black label here is a lot more clean, a lot more straightforward, a lot more classic. I have a bunch of cards in CSG because honestly, they do a very good job slabbing the wrestling cards. And obviously that's my bread and butter and kind of my personal collecting outside of my Medano and those ones. I've had stuff directly graded with them. Very good. One thing I'll throw in there for those of you who ever get a chance, if you come across one in the wild, their holder for the thicker cards is actually very good. It's actually very solid, very sturdy. And the holders themselves, as Steve kind of mentioned, they're actually very solid in hand. If you get a chance to hold one in hand, it's very good. And it's nice and clear. So it does present the card very well. I think it shows it aesthetically. And again, you're not paying a crazy premium because the sports card market doesn't seem to appreciate it as much.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of how I price them. You just have to take in what, how the market perceives them. So, a 10, I might price it at 9 price just to give it a little bit of wiggle room because, in case someone calls me out on, well, it's not PSA or it's not Beckett or this or that. But they're still nice cards. And, for the most part, I agreed with the grade on them as well. So, but yeah, no, it was nice to get them out in this area. And like I said, I do like this newer holder.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So here's a couple examples here. 22 Topps Clear Authentic Tech autographs. So you got more of a see-through kind of card, and then real one autographs. So Topps Heritage. On a Topps Heritage card, it looks nice and clean. They used a good image too, by the way. White jersey is a good call because it helps the blue show up much better. So it worked out very nicely there. Another couple more autographs here. Also CSG in the same vein. So we got Topps Gypsy Queen. They do a pretty good job design-wise with those. And then the Panini National Treasures. So those ones are kind of fun because those ones tend to be, if you like a fairly clean design, and because it's unlicensed, obviously you can see from the pose, we strategically avoid showing the logos. But that also means the price is adjusted down accordingly compared to the licensed version of a similar kind of card. So you are getting a little bit more of a discount with that. So bear that in mind. Again, one more set here. So Flawless, again, still Panini, still unlicensed, but Flawless brand is a strong brand. So you're getting a strong brand, kind of a nice design because Flawless tends to be kind of a nice design. This is the out of 10 version here. And then you are getting a little bit of a discount because it is the unlicensed. And again, we've got kind of the side angle thing going on. They're using a lot of those images to kind of hide the logo a little bit. So, and then Topps Diamond Icons here. With red ink, numbered to 5. So that's a logo. So these two are SGC, and obviously with SGC, they do include the serial number at the bottom of the label, which I think is very handy because again, it shows exactly what it is right on the front. Now here's an interesting one. So Upper Deck Premier exemplary stamps. So you got Doug Gilmore here, and this is the 1 of 1. So this is a big one. And Dougie is very popular, very popular.
Yeah, I picked this up Saturday again. This would have probably been a good one to have in Toronto, but yeah, no, actually, I took it in a trade towards the owner of it wanted an Austin Matthews rookie card, so this was part of the trade for an Austin Matthews. So, anytime I get a 1-on-1, Gilmore signs a lot, obviously, but it's still Dougie Gilmore and Toronto Maple Leafs. So. Don't expect this one to last too long in the store.
And kind of in that vein, Gilmore was there in Toronto, and he was actually doing a signing as one of the signers. A lot of the Leaf captains were there. I think they had Sittler and they had Wendell Clark and a couple of the different names. Davey Keon, I think, was part of the list, if memory serves me. So obviously you have a lot of Leaf greats there. Good selling point, obviously, for the show. But I'll say, I don't go near where the autographed pavilion is, but I do know I do have a couple of hobby buddies that definitely do. And, obviously all the Leaf players get a great reception because, Toronto area, great reception for the Leafs. But Dougie Gilmore, from what I heard, got a very loud reception. He's still extremely popular in that neck of the woods, still has for the collectors that are into it, are very passionate about it. So something like this would definitely be right up their alley. So again, any of the cards we're showing, if you have questions about it, or if you want to find out if it's still around, reach out directly to the store and the contact points we provided.
And we did bring, along with the framework pieces, several Doug Gilmore auto and some other guy named Wendell Clark that's fairly popular as well with the Leafs. So, and a couple nice combination pictures with them together. So, again, great items for our local Leaf fans.
Absolutely. Now here's a classic, my 86 Fleer Michael Jordan in a PSA 4. Now, even in a 4, considering the amount of solid borders, actually a pretty clean front. A little off center, top to bottom, but I like it.
Yeah, and this is a card we don't normally find too often in this area, but yeah, 3 or 4 months ago, a couple came in and the gentleman said he had found it. In a pile of cards. And of course, you hear that story all the time. So right away with a Jordan, you kind of think, well, it's probably a fake. But then, when I saw the centering and things like that, I said, actually, I think this one's real. So we kind of agreed that, I wanted to make sure it was real before I purchased it. So, we made an agreement, and as long as, the card graded, we would pay accordingly for it. So it just came back, and it was a 4. So it's been a while since we've had one. And other than the centering, it's actually a very nice 4. Could have easily, a little better centering, could have possibly eked out a 5, maybe a 6. But still, this prep card's gone up so much over the last 10, 15 years.
Exactly. So that's kind of like it becomes, I don't want to say value play, because realistically a lot of these cards are expensive, but as the higher end got more expensive, it pulled up the lower grades because people started going like, okay, I can't afford that grade, let me go down a grade. And then they would try to find, so now they're looking for eye appeal. Basically what they're looking for is they're looking for best bang for the buck. What at this grade, what's the nicest copy I can get, the cleanest copy that I can get, and that's kind of what people ended up looking for. So let's see. I think, if memory serves me, I think I made that. Yes, I made that the last one there in the showcase. So finished off there with the Jordan card. I think that's appropriate. Last two there with Dougie and for the Jordan. So I think that was an appropriate last two to include on there. So that's a pretty good list of stuff. So for the most part, that'll be the episode. One more thing though, before we go, I think it's very important. We got to make sure, as a Canadian-based podcast, we would be deported if we don't at least briefly touch on the hockey playoffs. So, Steve, my question for you is this. I don't want to get predictions because we still got a lot of series going on and they're mid-flight. But here is my question. Any thoughts on any of the series we've seen so far? Is anything surprising you?
I'm kind of looking forward to Game 5 of the St. Louis Winnipeg game.
Okay.
I just like the way Winnipeg's just a hardworking team, or actually St. Louis is, but I like the way St. Louis is playing. So we'll see. Of course, Hellebuyck, you would think he'll bounce back, but I wouldn't sleep on St. Louis. I think this might be the deciding game. Whoever, goes up 3-2 will probably win the series. So I'm looking forward to that. But the other series, Toronto, Ottawa, I mean, that series could be 2-2 or 3-1 the other way as well. So again, that's a big game, the game 6 of that, or game 5, I guess. But other than that, things are kind of going as I thought they would. I guess a little disappointed in Tampa Bay. I thought they might, they might even win that one. They still might, but I was like, don't sleep on Tampa Bay. But I guess Florida might be legit. And Bobrovsky always seems to turn it up in playoffs, so good for him.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's always nice when the defending Stanley Cup champions and two-time, appearances there is at least a solid team. I do enjoy though in this first round that we ended up with the Battle of Florida indirectly. Yeah. We got a rehash of the Battle of Ontario, which, by the way, just a quick kind of side story. I mentioned to Steve that a lot, and also here, that a lot of the activity centered around the evenings when we went out to have dinner, and we would strategize, go into a place where the televisions were prominently located that allowed us to kind of peruse the games as we were enjoying our food and the company. But one of the funny things is I did enjoy, though, obviously being in the Toronto area, the Battle of Ontario. Even when there was another game on, Toronto Ottawa was getting all the TVs unless someone explicitly asked to get one of the other games put on. But I did enjoy that even when the audio was on or audio was off, the 1,018 references to the past Battle of Ontario, it was just hilarious to see. And then the fact that Max Domi is in the series, kind of plays into that a little bit as well. Like, they'll milk this for all it's worth to get all the references. I joke with a buddy of mine, if you want an over-under and references to Battle of Ontario, whatever the number is, pick the over. They'll throw more clips and more references to it. So that's kind of fun. The only one that has been surprising to me, even as a Dallas fan, Dallas is kind of undermanned. Robertson's been out. Miro Heiskanen's been out. So they've been kind of a little underpowered. They've had some struggles. They lost like 7 games in a row going into the playoffs. Like, they backed all the way into the playoffs. So I thought Colorado had a very strong advantage. So Dallas coming out and even getting ahead in the series initially. So right now, Dallas is ahead 3-2, which has been a surprise to me. The last game was probably their most complete game they played They're playing them tough. I knew that if they were both healthy, they would play tough. I've been surprised they've been able to hold on to a lead here, considering they're a little undermanned at the start of the playoffs.
Yeah, I haven't paid much attention to the Western playoffs because I'm usually in bed by then. But
Sure.
but I like when I in any sport I like not necessarily going for the favorite. You kind of just try to see who's playing well in that, and I like picking that one team that if you want to call them an underdog or whatever. But that's why I kind of liked seeing how St. Louis was playing. And even Ottawa, I haven't ruled them out yet, so this will be a big one. And of course, if they can win in Toronto, the Leafs will start feeling it from their faithful, and the sticks start getting a little tighter, and who knows what could happen. They have been there before, let's just say that. But the Leafs should win.
We'll see. We'll see.
They should.
As we record this, so this episode will drop on Wednesday. So by the time this episode drops tonight, we've got 4 games on. So we got the Toronto Ottawa game, we got Jersey and Carolina. New Jersey's trying to close that one out. Sorry, Carolina's trying to close that one out. They're up 3 games to nothing. So 3 games to 1. Minnesota and Vegas tied, so somebody's trying to get ahead on that one. And Edmonton and LA. Now, I will say this: we did our own predictions, kind of on my channel, YouTube channel. I'll say this: if LA can't beat Edmonton this time, with again going into the playoffs, they've had Draisaitl and McDavid were both injured several times late in the season going into it. They're a little underpowered compared to where they were. They're not. They've had moments where Skinner is, letting in some easy go. If you can't beat this version of the Oilers, if LA, fold the franchise. Like, I don't know what to do for you. You're not getting past this team if you can't beat them. This rivalry is not really a rivalry if you don't actually conquer them once. You got to actually beat them one time.
Yeah. So I guess I like Carolina tonight. Vegas is back on track. And Carolina, you would think, would knock New Jersey out. And then what was the 4th game? Oh, the Edmonton. That's the only one. And I would say LA. It's in LA, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe this is the game where McDavid just takes over. But we'll see. So I might look like a genius tomorrow or an absolute fool.
There you go. Well, a couple of picks there at the end. So thank you all. One thing I'll go. So I'll let Steve go so he can get going back into the shop. But real quick, just make sure, as I said earlier, if you've got more pressing matters, reach out directly to the store at the contact points we gave you. Otherwise, if it is less time sensitive, you just want to give a comment or a question, feel free to put it in the comment section and we'll be happy to look at it next episode. We generally come back and look at it. Last thing also, feel free to keep hitting the like. We appreciate it. It helps the engagement. And then also thank you for those of you who have been subscribing recently. We've had a little uptick. We've been able to get past it. I want to start working my way towards 500 subscribers. So if you don't already subscribe, for Steve's Hockey Picks alone, subscribe. And if you keep subscribing, maybe one day we'll see Blair again. Maybe.
And I'm not very good at making picks, but who is?
It is what it is. So for Steve, Collector Scalps, Collector People, and myself, thank you very much for this episode. We will catch you in the next one.